overcoming fear, I think is the toughest thing up front.
We use the AAR after action review all the time. Repeat what you just said though, because you gave some bullet points in it that I don't have. What's up, AGPMA family? My name is Cody Garza, and I am here as always with Grandmaster Garza. And today we have a very special guest. We have Colonel Aguilar here, Jose Aguilar, who's a legend around here. If you're a black belt, you've heard many stories about him, or if you train with Grandmaster Garza for any time, you've heard a lot of stories about this gentleman right here that we're very honored to have joining us today. We'll introduce him a little bit more, but man, whenever we started talking about the podcast and we put together a little brainstorming session and just talking about who we wanted to interview, you were the number one on the list from the very beginning. So I'm super excited that you're our first guest to have on. Just honored to be able to talk with you a little bit today. I know every time you talk, you have so much wisdom, and even the people that we put information out and they ask some questions, they're super excited too. So thank you for being with us today, sir.
Excellent. Great to be here.
Yeah. So I'll just say a little bit about who you are, and then I'll let you guys kind of talk a little bit about how y'all's paths have crossed over the years, and we'll go from there. So your title is Colonel, U.S. Army, retired, and now Vice President of an architectural engineering firm, correct? And then you were the commander of Hunter Army Airfield and commanded the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers District in Portland, Oregon, correct? In the past, correct. As you were in service. Awesome. Well, thank you for your service, sir. And I know you have tons of leadership experience. We're super excited to ask you some questions. But before we jump in, anything you'd like to add to what I've already said about anything?
I do want to lead off with saying I'm wearing this hat, but I'm not representing the military or the Army. Although I'm a soldier for life, right? And I'm still recruiting. So if anybody wants to join the Army, I'll help you get there, or any branch of service. But I'm not representing the military services here. I am a retired colonel, and it was an awesome time in the military. The other piece is I am wearing a shirt from my firm, which is STV, an architect engineering firm. So I am representing them because that's the team that I'm on right now. And so that's what we do, is we do architect engineering. But thanks for the intro.
Awesome. Why don't you start, Grandmaster Garza, about just what are your memories from young Jose? One thing I didn't mention is you are a black belt under Grandmaster Garza, one of the early on black belts, second degree. Sorry, let me get that right. Second degree black belt. So y'all's paths crossed at a young age for him. So why don't you share a little bit about your first memories and that?
Well, when I think of Mr. Colonel Aguilar, I think about just several things. Number one, a trip he and I were taken to go to Galveston to a tournament, and I asked him what his goals were. He says, "I want to go to West Point, sir." And from what I understand, you were about 13 years old at that time. And so fast forward, he got his dream. He went to West Point. And just several highlights of that. I don't know if we want to jump all the way to it, but that was just one of the first things. Second thing is he was one of our first junior instructors. And I feel like he set a standard. It was a good standard. And we've had several people come after that who I think had a good role model to follow. What do you think?
Well, thanks, sir. I did want to say that that's not how I remember it. But no, so at 13, I just remember joining kind of my second family. So I always had a really good time coming in, training hard. But obviously, Grandmaster Garza is a father figure, and I have a father. He does a great job, but that was just awesome. And then all of my brothers and sisters that were here as well, too. Most of them were actually a little bit older than me, but they took me under their wing and really coached me through growing up through high school and then going to college and making some of those decisions, helping me to prepare for going to college. So that was great. I also, I think the other piece too is that we've stayed in touch, and we stayed in touch through today. I mean, even when I was in the military, you visited at several locations. Right. While at West Point, you came and helped to teach, and so that was just awesome. So always that was great. The two things that remain with me while I was at West Point, because it's a totally new environment and it is tough, was faith and martial arts. Those are the two things that did not change. So it was great.
Awesome.
That's great. Can you share a little bit more of that story for I know the Army Karate Championships. I think we've heard his story a few times, or a version of it.
I'd love to hear. Remember it.
I'd love to hear your version of the story, and then y'all can talk about it. But I'd like to hear kind of how that went, and you invited him and things like that.
No, absolutely. So he came actually several times, and I may mix him up. You know, when you get to our age, you kind of. You remember maybe 50%, and then the rest of it you just kind of fill in. You know,
between
you
the two
take
of us,
the
we'll
liberty.
get 100%.
That's right. We'll get it, and then we'll agree on what the final looks like. But no, I think first it was having him come visit and to teach was awesome. We had a great team there. The team would always have fight offs to go off and to fight with the other colleges. Our favorite was going to beat Navy every year, but so basically he came, and I remember one time that he came, and this must have been the one time that we were training for Navy, and he came there, and so I remember letting him borrow my car. I had a little Toyota Celica, right, just a little car, and I remember the way he adjusted the seat. I mean, it was cholo all the way. Those of you who may not know that word, but anyway, so low rider all the way. But that was pretty cool. But he came, and he led us through the training. And the team just, you know, how he is as an instructor. So, the team just basically ate up everything he was teaching them. Mm-hmm. And I think a couple of months later, I just remember that we fought Navy, we beat them. We beat them worse than we normally do, right? And it was great. So I just remember that. And I also remember that the team voted unanimously that he should get the trophy that we got when we beat Navy. And that's a big deal.
I thought y'all went and got a different trophy and gave it to me. Wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Anything you'd want to add to that story?
Well, I thought it was awesome because you guys also had a, what was it called, close quarter combat group that y'all had gotten a leader, and so I got to work with y'all on that, close quarter combat training, and then I do remember like it was yesterday at the party after the graduation, they all gathered around me and presented me with the trophy, and I thought that was beautiful too. And then I guess the next thing after that, how many years later, a year ago, last 4th of July, I think it was, y'all had what'd you have?
We had
reunion.
We did. We had a little mini reunion in Hawaii. There was a couple of folks that are over in Hawaii. And I think I was here, and I casually mentioned it, and your dad kind of invited himself to it. I mean, he's like, I'm part of that
why
team.
not?
Why shouldn't I be invited? So we went to Hawaii. That was also a great experience. We had some of the officers that were assigned there, not cadets, but the officers. 2 of the officers that were there that were kind of our mentors there while we were going through that. And then Grandmaster Garza joined us as well too. We had a great time. Got to relive it. We weren't quite as quick as we were, certainly not as flexible, but it was a good time.
I wouldn't bring that up.
Yeah. It was a good time. And so I think that really the theme here is that the relationships that you build when you're a kid and the people that you look up to, keeping those relationships alive is awesome. And it helps you in everything that you do. Partly is, Cody, you know this one pretty well, but do you want to disappoint that guy? Of course you don't want to disappoint him. So, it also serves as a motivator, right? And also as a sounding board for the things you're going through in life. So that's been awesome.
I think I also went to your wedding in California, right?
We did. We were fortunate enough to get married there in San Francisco, and it used to be an Army base there. Now it belongs to Park Service or someone else. I can't remember, but yeah. So that was great. And then having him meet that side of the family as well. So then now, not only are we great friends, but now he knows my wife, and she actually came in, did some classes as well when we would come for the summer. And don't even think you were born yet at that point, but so it was really good, and so that relationship he's taught my kids as well too. So it's been really good. So it's it's a family thing. It's really that extended family.
Yeah, I think Kim and I both, just knowing the Aguilar family as well as we do, and having had the relationship that we've had with y'all for all these years, is we've always just been so amazed about how awesome your 4 sisters, how amazing they are. I'm including you in it too, but I'm talking about them right now. No, just when you look at the big picture, what were the main character traits, the habits and the attitudes that you think were the main things that led to that kind of result? Because your dad and your mom, they have to be very proud of all of y'all.
So I think the expectations that you set for your kids, the expectations, you're not surprised when they do well. You just expect that, right? Just
standard.
Set that expectation from your kids. I remember, our parents, you're not bringing a report card that's, below a B. And most of the times the B meant you were going to be there for a while talking through why is it that it's not an A. The other piece, I think, is that we have a great, and I agree, we have awesome sisters. Matter of fact, some of my friends who have met them are like, you are so spoiled. And I said, yeah, my wife spoils me as well too. So, but they're great. I think the other piece is that we shared a really good friendship that it still keeps us together. We're getting together for Mother's Day this next weekend, and I don't know. I show up. I say, "What do I bring?" And they usually, task me with pick up some Prosecco and some orange juice and all, and that's about it. But that friendship is there, and we do all these things together. We also, back to another comment that we had about just understanding that each one of us brings a different thing to the team, the family team, that the 5 of us. And so understanding that the question about understanding vehicles and getting a vehicle goes to Maria, understanding maybe a little bit about the military or something, or even the engineering comes to me. We have 2 nurses on so it's great that you have all of that, and we reach out to each other for those kinds of things. So.
Right. Yeah, that's good.
That's awesome. I had a somewhat recent interaction with your dad that was kind of funny. Kind of changed my perspective a little bit. And he was over at Dora's house, and I stopped him for something. I can't remember what it was, but he came up to me and started speaking in Spanish. And I said, "Oh no, I don't speak Spanish." He goes, "Why not?" And I said, "Well, my dad never taught me." And he said, No. This you, not your dad. And I was like, okay, I guess at the time, I think I was 33. Yeah, 33-year-old me, I can stop blaming my dad for me not speaking Spanish. So I think it's time for me to go ahead and start.
I enjoyed hearing that.
I was just like, I used to always say that. I used to always say, "Oh yeah, my dad never taught me." He speaks Spanish. Just blame him. And he just said, no. And I was like, oh, dang it.
If that ever happens to you again, the question back to him is, so how come you've never learned how to speak English?
No, sir. I will not be doing that.
Okay.
I will not be doing that.
He probably does better at the English than he does at the Spanish.
For sure. Yeah, that doesn't take much. It's a low bar. I've said it. That's it.
Well, I just want to also add to the whole thing is relationships have been very important to all of us, I believe. We love the Aguilar family. I think we would do anything that we could do to make y'all's life better if you needed something. And I feel the same way back the other way around too. So
absolutely.
I'll tell you, there is, we talked about the 5 of us, but obviously that's spouses and kids and grandkids now. And so the team here now, after I got back from the military, here the 5 of us getting together, but the family that we say family is being invited to things. So you and Kim are obviously part of that. Cody's got his own life, right? So so don't feel bad, but you're included in that. Mrs. Bloomer is part of that as well, and then Mrs. Durrett too is kind of part of that team. So it's a small group, but so who else are we inviting? Your names are always already included in us having gathered. So really appreciate that that friendship. So.
Also, was it Savannah, Georgia, where you became the commander? And I think I went to your, when you were, what did he call it?
Assumed the command and then changed out.
And then 2 years later, I went back when you changed out. I was so impressed with their, just the way they were impacted by your leadership. And that's what we're here to talk about, is leadership. So maybe you can bring up some of those principles that you followed there. And, yeah.
Well, absolutely. I think the first thing is to sort of like set the stage for the story you said. So that was Savannah, Georgia. I was selected to be the garrison commander for Hunter Army Airfield. A great place, really good people. But when I was selected, all my buddies called me up and said, hey, are you okay? Being a garrison commander wasn't necessarily looked at as a big deal because you wanted to be in it, leading troops out on the field. I had actually been deployed a couple of times to Iraq. The one, a couple, about a year before, I just got back from a 15-month deployment. So it was good that I had some time to spend with family. But I think this is that leadership lesson that talks about the fact that you take what you're given and you go with it and you have a great attitude about it. And so I stepped into that job not really knowing what I was stepping into. I learned a lot. There's some really very good people there. Suzanne and I both, because this really is a command team, if you will. She's dealing with certain things. I mean, she's not getting paid, but I mean, she's the spouse. And so did a lot of work with the community. And so what you ended up seeing is the fact that the community, I'd had a lot of involvement with the community. So therefore, we had an impact, but really they had impacted us. The three mentors that I had there were the chairman of the county commissioners, Chairman Lakakis, just an awesome individual, just took me under his wing when I arrived there. He kind of counted us as one of the cities, even though we were a military base. So I sat on all the different things that we needed to do as leaders within the area. And then the second one, still keep in contact with him. He was the general manager for the CBS affiliate there. So really helped me out on engaging the public and those kinds of things, and kind of gave me a heads up when things were, when a story was going to break. So that was awesome as well too. But the last one that most folks don't quite get was that my secretary. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would say that the leadership lesson there is she was just an awesome lady. I mean, like, she was a second mom to me for those 2 years, but she knew all the relationships, all the people. So I would go to something, her first name is Glenda, and I would come back from some board meeting or something, and I would come back and I would say, Miss Glenda, it was always she would come in very early. So before PT, before going out on a run and do those types of things, I would come in, she was there, and I would say, Miss Glenda, here's what I heard. It just didn't make sense to me how we got to that decision. And then she would say, well, let me fill in the blanks. And so she just coached and mentored me through all of that, some of the politics and everything else. But she was just a wonderful lady. But that leadership experience was awesome. And as I think we've talked about before, and that is, it really starts at home and then places like the martial arts and having folks that you look up to influence you.
That's great. All right. You want to get into the questions?
Sure.
All right. So I know we kind of mentioned this before, but some of these are going to be lightning rounds. So this will just kind of be me and you, obviously. Beyond that, as I ask you a question from one of our listeners, we posted on our members only page, our Black Belt alumni page. Grandmaster Garza posted a few places just asking for people to submit questions. So we have several. You can answer, obviously, and then if you guys want to chat about whatever that answer is and just give any insight you guys would like to give. So lightning round first, and I know you watched our podcast, the Q&A with Grandmaster Garza. Some of these are going to be you're going to recognize, but that's okay. Just go quick. So favorite color?
Red.
Red. All right. And favorite location you've ever vacationed to?
Cancun.
Cancun.
I'm repeating because it's just a great place.
Yep.
Yeah.
Favorite animal?
Cheetah and eagle.
Okay. Okay.
Cheetah.
Favorite type of food to eat?
Yeah, I'd have to go with Mexican. I mean, it's what I know. Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah.
And favorite dessert?
I'd like to say I don't have one because that would be the disciplined answer. But no, I usually like to put a peanut butter and a honey sandwich together because it's easy to make. I always have the ingredients. So yeah,
That's a pretty healthy dessert you're choosing there, sir. Some people would call that a post-workout snack. All right. Final question is actually from Dora Bloomer. I think you know her pretty well.
I do.
She said, "Who is your favorite sister?"
Well, I like all of them the same as I tell my kids. It depends, right? Like each one has favorite things that they do for me. No, I'm kidding. That we do together. So yeah.
It's funny because so many people here at PMA know Dora and Angela, your siblings, and they know your stories and you've come for BBC, but some people hadn't connected the dots until she actually commented under one of the posts and said that question, and it was pretty clear that she was your sister. And so people were messaging saying, "Wait, what? I had no idea." So I see them around all the time, but they didn't realize. So very cool. So what is your favorite pastime now that you're retired?
So my wife could easily. So first of all, I obviously love spending time with family, and it's just Suzanne and I are living here in the area now, and so it's awesome to spend time with her. It's like with the kids out of the house and all. I mean, we're dating again. It's awesome. So it's great. But what she would tell you is that I love to head up to the land and just walk in the woods like a good soldier, right? Just walk in the woods, and it's not. The soldiering piece of it is, I think it's just so peaceful. I think everybody has a different walk in the land for them. And that's actually important in leadership as well, too, because you have to have what recharges you. And that recharges me. It doesn't matter what's happened. I get out there and I come back out just, it's great. It's great. It's my therapy, I guess. Never been to therapy. Well, some of my friends probably say, yeah, I've been to therapy. But anyway, so that's walk in the woods.
Gotcha.
That's good.
Sharpen the saw.
There you go.
Yeah. How much land do you have?
It's actually, speaking of sisters, we have three of us that own it, 42 acres up in Lake Livingston area, point blank. Yeah. So yeah, I extend yet another time at the end. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take you up on that now. So we're gonna come check it out. All right. This one is from somebody you know, Master Ferrero. Know him very well. He asks, when did you first realize that you were a leader? Was it something that you saw and wanted to achieve, or did you realize that you were already in a position of leadership, whether you wanted it or not?
So I think I realized I was a leader when I was the oldest in the family, right? Or when when your parents tell you, "Hey, you're in charge," right? So that's pretty quick. It's happened to all of us, I'm sure, right? But when I believe I gained some confidence in leadership was in martial arts. Grandmaster Garza and I were just talking about teaching the mighty mites. I think we call them the little kids, and so I diverge a little bit, but my son's a teacher, and we've agreed that the biggest thing about leadership or being an instructor or anything is you have to gain and maintain their attention, right? That's number one. I mean, if they're not, it doesn't matter how good you are. You've got to gain and maintain it. And that's kind of an army term when you're chasing the enemy. You got to gain and maintain contact with the enemy, right? So it's kind of weird that I think those things are similar.
I would say it's awesome.
Yeah. So
they're not the enemy, by the way.
They're not.
They're the challenge.
But that was awesome. Is getting a chance to come in there and chat with kids, gaining their attention, and then also actually talking with the parents, right? And then talking with the parents, understanding how their kids are dealing with things. And then you get a lot from the parents on what it is that you need to talk to the kids about, and I would weave some of those stories in there and, do your homework, yes, but I mean, a little bit more than that to just help the parents out, because I mean, that's the role that we had. So, yeah. And one thing about Grandmaster Ferrero, yes, we tested for black together, and that was awesome. I mean, I could not think of a better person to train up for it, and then to just go through it together, because that is it's a tough experience, but it's a bonding experience. And we were already great friends, but after that, I mean, even better friends. So stayed in touch.
I know y'all still stay in touch now, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's awesome. This one came from a bunch of different people. It probably won't be too much of a surprise. You've mentioned a little bit of it already, but I'm going to ask it because they did. So I think at least three. I know Natasha Davis, Kaylee Diaz, and Logan Hilton are who I'm going to give the shout out to. Those are the three that I know for sure asked this question. But how did training here at AGPMA, or what it was at the time, help you in your career? And then follow up with that is, what is the main foundational lessons that you learned that help push you through tough times to go further?
Okay, so obviously the discipline within martial arts, and I don't mean discipline and how many push-ups and can you keep going. I just mean the mindset that you get from going through sort of it is a structured way of doing things with a goal in the end, and then sort of a plan and the mindset to just get it done. That had to have been the foundation. I mean, did I come with some of that when I arrived at here to do some karate? Well, of course I did. I think my parents did a great job with that, but that was the initial foundation, and then building up on that. And I think it's been stair-step, because at that point in time, I received what I needed to get to the next step, and then to the military academy, and then in the Army, leading troops all the way until retirement, and then now in the civilian world as well, because leadership really is leadership. Empathy, understanding where you want to get, understanding that leadership is not necessarily about the goal. Leadership is about the people who are the ones that get the work done, and it's situational. It's situational. Within this situation is also, you address something a different way with each person, and you've got to understand that person and what makes them tick, not in a manipulative way, but in a way to assist them to get where it is that they need to be within the team to accomplish the overall mission. So you had a second part to that.
What's the main foundational lesson that you learned that helped push you through? You kind of mentioned it, but will help you push you through the times to go further. Yeah.
So I think the main foundational lesson is you could always get more out of this body, right? Body and mind, really, honestly. Body, mind, and spirit, right? You can always get more. And it isn't about more. It's just that you can reach a new plateau. And I think the best example of that is Army Ranger training. So Ranger School, you don't think you can stay up for that many days straight. You think you can't walk that far. You think it's cold. You think it's hot, whatever it is. But it just pushes you, and it pushes your body to the limit. And you figure out that you have a new plateau. I'm sure that, at some point in time, you can tear this body down so much that you kind of, you wear it out. But for the most part, is every time that you're doing that, and if it is controlled, it actually gets you to a new plateau. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Well said.
Anything to add?
I could add things, but then it'd be my story. We're talking about his story here.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
So Kaylee Diaz, it's actually Logan's sister, who asked this question. Were there any times when you were in a leadership position and weren't entirely sure what to do, or weren't confident in your decisions as a leader? If so, how did you gain confidence and know what to do?
So Kaylee, right?
Yes.
Is that right? So Kaylee, just over 50% of the time, right? Like that's the thing, is being in a leadership position. It really is about making the best decisions you can make in ambiguous situations. Those happen all the time. I'm sure it happens to all of us, right? You're going to make a decision and you only have 10% of the information, and you're trusting on judgment and all. So I think if I was to sit here and tell you about all of those, I mean, it would take all day, all night. I mean, it would take a few days, actually a few weeks. But maybe I think what she's getting at is, so how do you handle those? And I think part of that is you do have to be confident in your abilities. You have to trust your judgment. Your judgment was developed through parents here at teaching karate, being mentored by different people. So you know right and wrong. You know which way it is that you want to go. You do the best that you can with the information that you have. One big lesson is that you have to ask yourself, do you need to make a decision right then and there? Like sometimes you can wait to make that decision. You do not have to make the decision. Even if someone is asking you that question, say, well, is that the right time to make that decision? But when you're in a position where you've got to make a decision, returning fire, whatever, you don't have just trust your judgment, and you'll make mistakes. But guess what? That's great. You're learning from them, and you'll be better. You're in a better situation the next time because you just made that mistake. You're not going to make it again. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
That's great. Great answer.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next question is from Miss Hannah. She said, what are some of the struggles that you have experienced and overcome in your leadership experience? So that's a similar question, but slightly different.
I think the biggest struggle, and I think most of us deal with this, Hannah, right? So Hannah, thanks for the question. I think the biggest struggle is that all of us have different strengths and weaknesses, and they're strengths and weaknesses, and so therefore understanding what those are, seeing it from other people's perspective, is incredibly important. There's through the business world, there's a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threat that you can do. You can do it on an individual, you can do it on an organization, and that is so important to do that as the basis for as you're creating teams, or as you personally are going into a new job, because that actually tells you your strengths. Okay, you need to capitalize on those and use them. Your weaknesses, you better start working on them, or find the right teammate that can help you with that. Right? If you're in a team, and most of the times I was in the team dynamics, you figure out which team member will be the one who actually is either making the decision or the recommendation or being in front of someone doing something, because that's the best person. They're going to be representatives of the team. So then if you do that right, what happens is a team, you always say, that's a great team. What it is those folks actually put the right person in the right place to make the best decisions for the team. And you respect each other enough to where you take all the input, and then everyone also knows that it's not about each other, but about the team. So therefore you get a much better product, a much better decision, whatever it is, if you have that respect and everyone understands their strengths and weaknesses.
That's great. Awesome. All right. Another one from Hannah Zuniga. She said, what are some things that you feel you have accomplished as a leader outside of your incredible titles? And she added, hoo-ah. So, I know she's currently dating a guy named Lee Kane, who is a Army Ranger, so I know they have a lot of that in there.
Absolutely.
Lee Kane, her boyfriend, is famous around here for saying water's a crutch. Anytime we asked for a water, we would get a water break during BBC, he would say, water's a crutch.
Yeah, it was before your time, but it was a crutch back then. We were back in the day. I think, and it's good we allow people to hydrate nowadays. So I think... so that's, I don't know if the big piece on that one is that you do have to be confident in what it is that you're doing. And I would say, let's circle back to that one, because that one's going to come back as we actually talk some other topics, and I can add it. So, and then some of these are very similar. So we want to make sure we get to,
Well, that one, okay. That sounds good. So Jacob Garza, which is obviously my brother, another son, right? So he said, with your level of military training and self-defense and medical, what type of items, if any, do you carry with you every day in case of emergency?
So I do have a go bag. I feel like, like you equate that with military guys or engineers, and I'm both. So I have a go bag, right? Just to make sure that I've got everything that I need in there. Obviously, you've got you got a flashlight, you got what you define as a go bag, a couple little things in case you get some cuts and all that, extra set of clothes, whatever. But just a small little piece of kit. But I actually think what's more important is not what you have with you. The number one thing is communications, right? Better than a weapon sometimes. I think I've made that comment before, as spoken to the team here, is that you need to understand where you are, that you have situational awareness where you are, because you can have a first aid kit, but if you know where the hospital is, that's probably better, right? And then also continuously doing a risk analysis of what it is that you're doing, so you understand the threats and you can mitigate them, regardless of what you're doing, including mowing the yard, where your eye protection, understand what the risks are. And then to do a very quick, we did this in the military all the time, is do a very quick analysis of okay, so worst case scenario, what would you do? Okay, great. Let's put it into action. And I'll tie it back to the question, the last question, and that is, so outside of titles and work, my proudest thing, and you can attest to it already, is what influence do you have on your children? How do you mold citizens to be productive members of society, a contribution instead of a detriment to society, right? That is awesome. And so basically teaching them that as well too is pretty important. And then back to the previous question, which is that if all of us took that responsibility to heart, then this would just be so much better world, right? Who are you raising? What are they doing? I'm proud of my kids. I mean, I think she mentioned proudest. I mean, who is not proud of their kids? Right. They did not become who my wife and I wanted them to be, right? They went their own way on what they would do, but the character at the base, at the core, at the foundation is who we wanted them to be. So that's just awesome.
And you knocked out of the park. I mean, all of your kids are successful and definitely contributing members to society for sure, giving back. So that's awesome. All right. So the next one is from Brian McLean. This is another good one. So you obviously had a number of sources teaching you what leadership should be, and I imagine sometimes they contradicted. How do you filter and apply lessons to become the best version of a leader?
Well, I go back to something that Grandmaster Garza would say. I think it may have been Grandmaster Jewelry, empty your cup, right? Empty your cup. And, at first when you're a kid, you're like, what the heck are we talking about? And then, eventually you kind of figure out what it is. But I think that's actually very important, that you are going to see different viewpoints, how folks deal with things. And you need to pay attention to all of them. Forget about what you know for a second and evaluate them on their own merit. I think that's probably right now in our country, that's probably one of our biggest challenges. And that is that we're in camps, this camp, that camp. We're not going to get into politics, but just you think about this and you think this way, therefore we're enemies, right? That is the worst way to look at things. Someone else has a different viewpoint. They have a different viewpoint. You respect that viewpoint. You still have your own values, but you respect the viewpoint and you present your viewpoint and you hope that you've influenced, hope that they were listening as well too. But at the end of the day, it's nothing to fight about. Most things, right, are nothing to fight about. Just understand it. And if that relationship does not work out, then you can avoid that relationship. I mean, it's actually relatively easy, but keeping an open mind, empty your cup, right, is pretty important. And by nature, we do not do that very well, right? Humans do not do that. That the very first thing when either a question is asked or when an alternate view is offered is, that's not true. Let me just show you. I'm going to convince you that I'm actually right and you're wrong. That's if we kind of step back and do a little bit more of that empty your cup, I think that's very helpful in most situations.
That's a great answer.
I just think of the 3 habits that are relational, of the 7 habits of highly effective people, and think win-win is an abundant mentality. And so when you think approach something with that, then there's going to be enough of whatever it is you're trying to get for the team. You're going to have a win-win at the end of that. And you have to seek first to understand what is the real situation here, what is the real problem here. And then you want to be understood. So there's a balance of listening and communicating. And then the synergy comes out of celebrating the differences and valuing the differences and letting those differences complement each other. So they become complementary differences instead of being conflicting so much. But so much hate comes into it sometimes. It's kind of like what you were saying.
Absolutely.
A lot of that going on right now for sure. All right, so next one comes from Lincoln Hilton. My man Lincoln's always got great questions, lots of wisdom. He was a Black Belt candidate last year. He started off by saying how much he always enjoys your talks during Black Belt testing seasons and says you're always full of wisdom and humility. So that's a shout out from him. But his question is, how do you motivate people you can't give raises to? I'm thinking specifically to his time spent in the military. How did you bring more out of your team without offering them better pay? So
first of all, great question. And he kind of put me in a little bind here. So with the comments that he made, I can only go down, right? Like, so first, you have to understand what people value. Money is not the only thing people value. It doesn't matter who you're talking to. People value more things than just money. One thing that we really value is time, right? We value time. So if you have an employee, in this case, a soldier, who is doing a great job, you say, take the afternoon off. It's within my authority to do. Easy. Here's the other thing is we invest in those who have the potential to grow up to be leaders. So they're doing a great job. Their performance is an indicator of their potential. So therefore, you invest in those individuals. You reward them by investing in them in education. You invest in them and giving them positions of leadership. People invested in me, and I argued with them. Like, I'm not ready to leave this job. I'm not done. It's like, no, you're ready. And they push you to go to another position. So that there are so many different ways. The other way is you walk up and you give a pat on the back. You would be surprised how much that means to people sometimes, right? Mm-hmm. So treat them with dignity and respect. Talk to them, right? Spend some time with them, and there's way more things than just money. I would probably not be working if it was all about money, right? I wouldn't be working, at least not working for someone else in a firm like STV. Mm-hmm. But there's much more than money.
Yeah, it's a great answer. All right, another one from Lincoln, and I think there's another one coming that's similar, so I might combine them. I'll let you know when I get there. But what character attributes had the biggest impact on your career? And then follow up to that is, what are some practices you still do and continue to do to cultivate your character?
So first is you just got to check yourself all the time. I mean, as humans, we tend to be selfish. I mean, that's just it's a trait. I mean, and we have to all realize it. What you have to ask yourself is, why is it that you're doing certain things? What is my true motivation? And only you know, right? Some people think they know, but what is your true motivation for what it is that you're doing? So you have to check yourself. You have to, going back to your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Strengths, understand your strengths, understand your weaknesses, and then understand those people around you and try to figure out how it is that they're feeling it. We talked about communication a little bit, and understanding what's going on, having situational awareness and all. The biggest piece about situational awareness is the people around you. Is Cody today? If Cody walks through that door and he's not Cody today, you have a responsibility to walk up and say, Cody, hey, you're not you today. What's up? What can we help you with? And treating everyone that way is very important. But I think back to, because the question was more to you as an individual, I think the biggest piece is to continue to check yourself, to continue to see how it is that you're doing, get that 360 feedback. That 360 feedback is incredibly important. Yes, from your bosses, your superiors, but I think what's even more important is it's your subordinates or your teammates or your peers that you're working with. You need to have that relationship where they give you that feedback. Hey man, you really screwed that up. Yep, mm-hmm. Sure did. You don't need to beat me up anymore on it, right? Like, so you got to continue to check yourself on those things. The last one I think is probably the biggest one for me is my wife will check me. And so being able to be open to that feedback. I forget what you call it, that feedback, not criticism, but that feedback, right? And understand constructive criticism. Yeah, there you go. Understanding that it is feedback and it is a gift, that she went on a limb to give you that, or he or she, your spouse, because that's the relationship that endures. I mean, even my kids, right? It's great, love them, but I mean, it's my wife that I'm spending the rest of my life with, and mm-hmm. that feedback is pretty important because she's probably a little reluctant, just like I may be a little reluctant to give her some feedback. So take it for what it is, and then try to see how she's seeing it and try to apply that. So, yeah.
That's great.
Well said.
Very well said. I have the gift of having a wife that'll check me too, so it's awesome. Love it. All right. Judy Foster said, what was the biggest obstacle at the beginning of your leadership journey, and how did you overcome it to reach your goals? So looking back to the very beginning, was there anything that stands out as a big obstacle that kind of started you off?
Well, we are all apprehensive or scared of leading because of failure. I think everybody is afraid of failure. We all are to a certain degree. Some people are so motivated that they're actually failing because they're just, going head on without putting some thought into it. But we're all a little bit scared of it. So obviously I was scared. I was a little bit timid. I also, English is a second language. I'm still working on my English, but so that was a little bit of a challenge. Loved math because that didn't quite change, numbers didn't change. So that's probably why I became an engineer, is because I enjoyed it. Right. But, so I think that's probably enough on that topic there. But yeah, that's it's that don't be afraid to fail. That was probably the biggest thing. And then when you do fail and you turn it into a learning, hopefully you didn't hurt anyone or lose too much money or whatever the case may have been. But if you take that and you always do what we call in the Army an after action review, which is what happened, what was supposed to happen, and why, what can we do to sustain or improve for the next time? And you just go through that process, and it's very helpful. It's also good to have leaders who understand honest mistakes and actually celebrate honest mistakes, right? Like either by making fun of it or using it as a teaching point. And so once you get past that fear, I think, then it actually is relatively easy. And then you start to model how it is that they did it for others so that you're doing the same thing on bringing up the young lieutenants, as if you will, in the officer corps. Mm-hmm. So that's probably the biggest one it's fear. Overcoming fear, I think, is the toughest thing up front.
That's awesome. We use the AAR after action review all the time. Repeat what you just said though, because you gave some bullet points in it that I don't have.
So yes, absolutely. So basically, you look at the situation, whatever happened. So, what happened? What was supposed to happen? And what can we do to sustain or improve? Right. So, what was the plan? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. That's the plan. How did we execute that plan? Right. And then, okay, so what were the results? What went well? What did not go well? And then normally what you do is with the sustains and improves, we'd write them out, right? This typical engineer, military guy. You would have issue, discussion, recommendation. I would always add reference because there's always a standard for how you're doing things. So there's a manual that tells you how well you were supposed to accomplish that within those conditions, right? So then once you're finished with your AR, it says issue. So what was the issue? X. Okay, what's the action that you're going to take? And then it's important to put the date time where you're going to get it done by, right? To hold each other to standards. So then by when are we going to have that done? So that what you're doing is continuous learning, organizational learning, right? So okay, we made those mistakes, or let's continue to do this. Some of them, the action is keep doing what we're doing. Keep doing what we're doing. Don't change that, right, for next time. So
we did what we were supposed to do, so don't change it, right? That's awesome. All right. Next up is from Rosie LeMay. She said, is there anything that you would say to your younger self if you could give yourself some piece of advice going back? It's a great question.
I've thought about this a lot, and I'm actually surprised that my younger self was able to make some decisions that I'm not sure I'm capable of making now. And it sounds weird, but I look back at some of the decisions that I made and some of the things that I did, and I said, I had some really good people guide me along the way, and it's really cool that I made that decision, and that has set me up for things in the future. And don't misread this as, oh boy, I think I was all that and I am all that. I'm actually surprised at how things turned out, because you look at it and you say, for most of us, the decisions you make at 18 are essentially going to have a significant impact on the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. Now, and then maybe this is part of judgment, which we should try to withhold. Judgment on self. I don't know if I would trust me with that decision now with what I know to that kid to make that decision. I know that sounds weird, but all I'm saying is I don't I don't know if I would tell myself anything. I'm afraid I'd mess that guy up, right? I'm just afraid I got him. And probably because I am satisfied. Yes, ups and downs, but I'm satisfied with the way my life has been. So I don't know if I'd tell that kid anything.
You don't want to rock. I
want to ruin him.
Yeah, you don't want to rock the boat.
That's right.
That's good. Don't want to speak fear into him.
Yeah. All right. Next one is this is from Hannah Ward. Hannah Ward. She said, "What steps would you take to take the message to Garcia?" I think you're familiar with that story.
I'm familiar with that story. Rowan, President McKinley, I believe it is. But bottom line is...
Maybe, if you don't mind, let me cut you off, but can you tell us a little bit about what the message to Garcia is, or one of y'all, that just for listeners who have no idea what we're talking about?
He's doing a good job. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
So basically, it a good 100 and something years ago, and Cuba, I think, was the nation. I think everyone understands. We as a nation fight for... what we believe in, so what our interests are around the world, we do. There was a faction there in Cuba that was sort of fighting the revolution or at least a conflict, and so President McKinley needed to get a message to the leader of that faction, and Garcia. I don't remember the guy's name, but. So he talked to his advisors, and they're like, "Oh, you need to talk to Rowan." I don't remember the guy's name, but I remember Rowan because I've had a commander who's Rowan, and I always say, like, "Hey, you got to live up to that." But basically, he said, just this guy will get the message to him. So called him, gave it to him, and Garcia delivered the message. And the moral of that is that Garcia didn't say, "Okay, so why do I need to give him the message? How do I get there? What if this? What if that?" No, guidance, very clear. Get this message to Garcia. What does the message say? No, get the message to Garcia. And he did. He was very good at that. I mean, obviously you can picture a person that back in the day, right, knew how to get things, knew how to get there, worldly individual who understood more about life than just farming, not knocking it. I'm just saying he was an individual who kind of understood how to get things done. And the moral of that really is, and we've in the military and in leadership seminars, we've actually talked about this a bit, and that is we should be able to have an organization where you just give guidance and you shouldn't ask whether it will get done. Just that it will get done. And when you give the guidance, you do not become paralyzed by the amount of questions that someone is actually asking. It's okay, it's great to ask questions and all, but paralyzing questions that are almost, you had this in a previous podcast, that was basically like, by the fact that you ask so many questions, you basically just killed all the time you had to do the thing, because you're basically saying no. You're being a toad in the road by asking so many questions that it's just going to be so hard that person is going to turn around and do it themselves. Mm-hmm. And actually, that's actually something we need to guard against as well too, because we're developing people, and they'll probably ask questions, rightfully so, but we need to make sure and let them do it, and let them make mistakes, allow them to make honest mistakes, and then they're learning. And it probably wasn't as fast as you doing it, and it's probably not as pretty. You'd be surprised. Sometimes it's even better. I mean, yes. You would be surprised how many times people more so than not, folks have surprised me. Like, wow, I wouldn't have come up with that. That's outstanding. Mm-hmm. And so the message to Garcia is, hey, there are times to ask questions, but there are times when you're being told to do something, as we say in the military, move out and draw fire, right? Move out and get it done.
That's awesome. And so the question specific is, what steps would you take to take the message to Garcia? So is there anything other than, I mean, that was awesome. Yeah. Obviously, good explanation and everything. Is there anything specifically that you've done or that you would do?
Yeah, I think the big, the takeaway from all of that actually is be a guy that would take the message to Garcia. What steps have I taken? I will tell you that I considered it a failure if my boss was calling me about something, right? My boss gives me guidance to do things. I know what things he needs to know. We had this thing called CCIR, Commander's Critical Information Requirements, right? wake up criteria, whatever. You know your job. You know what you have to be doing. There aren't a lot of things you need to talk to your boss about if your boss is giving you guidance and giving you the resources to do the mission. But there are things you need to give them to say, hey, boss, status. Here you go. Here's where I'm at with this. Here you go. So I always considered it, when my boss called me about something, unless it was something I could have possibly not seen, then I failed. I need to keep him or her in the loop, understanding, and then making sure that they have the information that they need to do for the next higher level up. Mm-hmm. So the steps that I have taken is understanding that concept, understanding my boss, their needs for information, and ensuring that I'm giving it to them before they ask for it. And I always loved having folks who worked with me or were subordinates that did that. I'm like, man, it's autopilot. It's like, I don't have a job. And that's great to be in a leadership position where you've developed a team where you don't have a job. It's just awesome.
That's such a great answer. Love it.
Very well said, too. Yeah.
All right. Got a couple more here. And this is from Mikey Goet. And I know you've talked a little bit about this, but I want to give a shout out to my man, Mikey. He's one of our black belts. Not sure how old he is, maybe 15. Shout out. I hope I got that right. But he said, how did you build yourself up to do all the things that you've done in your life? So I know, like I said, you've talked a little bit about it, but is there anything specifically that you just felt like is a good ritual for you that builds you up to do something big?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think to Mikey, what I'd like to say is don't wait for somebody's answer. Get after it right now. You know what you need to do, right? So get after it. But I think maybe as a personal experience for me is, I've mentioned it a little bit before, but these were all steps. I mean, I really didn't know that the things that my parents were inculcating me to do and building my character and all was setting the foundation to then come, as an example, then go to school, right? And then that's also a lot of influences, a lot of great teachers there, but then also with the martial arts. And those are all stepping stone to the next thing, preparing you. And I think, Grandmaster Garza, we have not said thank you, God, during this entire podcast. So the way that, trust that he sets it all up for you, right? Trust that he is doing those things, even though it may seem like I just can't believe what I'm having to deal with right now. Maybe that's just an opportunity to just stretch you a little bit, because the next one that's coming, you're just going to be better prepared. I'd like to say that even now, that what you do is that it's just easy peasy. It's not. And the challenges are reoccurring, but you always kind of reach back to those experiences you've had, and they just help you to navigate the now. So start now, get after it. Anytime there's some challenges, embrace them and understand that that's actually setting you up for success for the future. So that's what I tell Mikey, right?
Mikey.
Yeah,
yes,
Mikey.
Sir.
Yeah. Thanks for the question, Mikey.
Yeah, he's awesome. All right. Do you have any other, this is just for me, you've mentioned a few little nuggets like the AAR bullets you gave another couple things after that, but any other just leadership things that you always went to that were just kind of your fallback? Hey, I always think of these bullet points, or I always go through this checklist. Is there anything like that you could share with us for my own sake, but also for anybody listening? That'd be awesome.
Absolutely. I think the very first piece that I would say was that leadership means you're leading people or organizations. So that automatically means it's not about you, right? It's not about you. Now, if you're representing the organization, right, you better show well, right? Mm-hmm. So it kind of is a little bit about you there, but in the sense that you are the representative for the organization. So I want to make sure that nuance isn't misread on what I say. So it's not about you. This was the first thing I would say. And I've always gone back to I call it the 4 C's: character, competence, commitment, culture. Okay, so again, character, competence, commitment, culture. And character, and I would always, there was a thing that I would put out to folks when I arrived in an organization. It was called the command philosophy, my command philosophy. It tells them a little bit about who you are, what's important to you, and how you embrace certain things. Hopefully you were helping them to not walk into your office and do something that just, is not right, because you've kind of put them on notice, right? Here's who I am. Here's how I lead. Here you go. So I would actually, over the years, I developed it with character, competence, commitment, and culture. And I want to give credit where credit's due, and that is the Army had character, competence, commitment were the 4 C's, and then it became so the 4 C's, and then it became the first 3 that I just mentioned. So character, competence, commitment are the three of the Army ways that for leaders. And then culture, I added culture because it's so important. The culture, I think some of you may have seen that they say, you can have a really good strategy, but if the culture of an organization is not an organization that is all moving in the same direction and there's respect, and then that strategy looks really cool, but you're going to fall on your face. Mm-hmm. You need a team with a great culture to produce, because even a sort of half strategy will look beautiful if you have a great team.
Yes, sir. So,
and character, and let me just kind of define those a little bit. Character, Grandmaster Guards, you talk about it all the time. The Army defined it by leadership, loyalty, duty, respect, and I can, so it's leadership attributes is what it defines. So, character is a person who it's hard to define. We actually know what it is, and we know what it is not, but it is a little bit hard to define. But I would say, if a person of character is one that folks say, go to him, her, that's for talk to them, right? That person that has a foundation of just honesty, doing the right thing, saying what they do, doing what they say, that kind of stuff, right? So that's the bedrock. All the others are no good if you don't have someone with character, right? Mm-hmm. The next piece is competence. And it doesn't matter what you do, that you are competent in your profession, right? That you're a competent instructor. And you know what those things are. Most of those are technical. A lot of those are technical, but some of those are leadership. So you have to be competent for whatever leadership role you're in to be competent in leadership, study leadership, understand leadership, right? So competency. So character, competence, now commitment. You could have the first 2. I would argue that you can't have a person of character who is not committed, right? You could make that argument, right? But if you have someone that has all the right attributes and they know that job really well, but they're just not committed to what it is that we're doing, and you actually do have some that have those, but their heart's not in it, they're not committed to it, they're not committed to the organizational mission, then you've got an issue. A really beautiful thing is sitting there, but it's not going anywhere. Mm-hmm. So you have to be committed to the organization, committed to the mission, committed to what needs to get done. And again, the last is culture, because every single one of us on a daily basis, regardless of whether it's the family team, the work team, the whatever, the friend team, you either add or take away a little bit from that positive culture within the organization. And I'd tell my kids, so how did you add to, this is what kids don't dislike, at least as kids, is when you have the questions, I want you to be a contribution to society. What did you do today to make the culture better, right? So it's like, Dad. So, but that's the way that I look at it, is all of us add or take away every day by our actions or inactions, what we say or what we fail to say, how we act or we fail to act within a team.
That's awesome. Love it.
I love those 4 C's, and I have a 5th C for you, because that's not how I see it. I actually do see it that way. But Jim Quick is a guy that I follow, and he says that the C between the B and the D is the choices that you make between birth and death. And so I had to think about those choices, but when you have character, you're going to make better choices than if you don't have character. And if you're committed, you're on a mission. You've deleted quit options. So,
right.
I love your 4 C's. I've just thrown it out the 5th one for you.
Excellent. I remember that one. So, yeah, that's good. At my age, I think 4 is already stretching how many C's I can remember.
4 is a good number. I have a lot of things I teach by 4s. Yeah,
just about everything seems like it ends up being 4.
Yeah,
around here.
3 is pretty cool too.
Later.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, this was awesome, man. Anything else in closing that either one of you guys would like to say?
Go first.
I
had something else that I thought was important, but let me see if it comes back to me while you speak.
So I was obviously pausing for my instructor, I think the theme, if you will, right, through this whole piece is that certainly trust in God. Everything is an opportunity. Try hard. You're going to fail, right? You're going to fail. Learn from it. And it isn't about you, especially when you're in a leadership position. It's about a team. It really is about service to that team. You serve that team. I really like the way that we talk about the military. Thank you for your service. I think it rolls off the tongue really well. Service, though, selfless service, right? A servant leader is a lot harder, at least initially, because of our nature, to get into that. Now I think it becomes easier as you practice that. So I would say that servant leadership piece, it's strive to get there. I'm still on my journey to try to get there. As they say in the Army, over.
Over. I have that memory from you when we talked on the phone before some BBC. It was always over, and then over and out. So, yeah, we talk about that all the time.
When you talk about selfless, my boot camp that I'm doing, I'm on the last week of it, and it's the 8-week deal, and the 8th habit is find your voice and inspire others to find theirs. And it's about speaking life into each other. And I think the Aguilars have always been some who spoke life into our relationship, and we always tried to be the same way as well. And when you're doing that, it is a selfless act. It's not something that you're speaking to get something. It's something that you're helping people find their voice, and you're not expecting anything back in return. That's a servant mindset.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This was awesome, as I expected it to be. Really appreciate it. It's a good way to have our first guest on. So
Praise
thanks
the
to
Lord.
everybody who sent
Glory
questions.
to God.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening in. Be sure you like and subscribe and share this message out to anybody you think would gain some awesome leadership knowledge out of this conversation we've had. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.